Okay, cool. So let's just start with kind of an opener. Let's just go around, have each of you say what engineering discipline you guys took from U Alberta, and then what your job is now, and just like a fun fact about yourself, just to get us opened up um, here. So whoever wants to start, I don't mind. Or I'll just pick on one of you. Okay, McNiel, start because I know you.
Um, I, so my name is McNiel-Inyani, and and more I'm going by Inyani these days. So to answer your question, Alicia, I studied the electrical and computer engineering. I studied electrical and computer engineering the biomed stream from undergraduate, and from there I went to pursue a master's in mechanical engineering.
And
Yeah.
and what are you doing now?
Currently, I'm a medical student, so just about to enter a clerkship. So past on the pre-clerkship and textbook phase. So super exciting, and it's quite an interesting experience being a medical student during a pandemic. Would not recommend.
And then just like a fun fact about yourself.
I have a random robot right here. Like, and that's yeah. Engineering is fun, and it's fun to work in the sector, but it's also a fun thing or skills to have, and allows you many opportunities for really cool hobbies. So robots everywhere.
Awesome. Thanks, McNeil. Sorry, do you want me to go by McNeil or Inyani?
Inyani, if you can manage.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's perfect. Okay. Jason, could you go next?
I'm Jason Wang. I graduated from Mechanical Co-op in 2018, so just a few years ago. Then went off to the Netherlands to do a master's in engineering and policy analysis, which I think I'll come back to in a bit. Yeah, I don't know what's fun about myself. Yeah, I don't know. I really gotten into climbing and bouldering recently, so I think in the next couple of weeks I'm going to go check out the new ice climbing wall at the Edmonton Ski Club.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you. Kirtan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for sure. Hey everyone, I'm Kirtan. I actually just graduated in April of this year from mechanical engineering. Currently, I'm working at MDA in Toronto on like space robotics and all that kind of fun stuff. Fun thing about me, I don't know. I like to scuba dive. I don't know if that counts.
That's very cool. Thank you. And Tyler?
Yeah, so hello everyone, I'm Tyler. I graduated from the U of A with a mechanical engineering degree in 2018. Then after that, I spent a year and a half in the Netherlands working at a small satellite company. And then I came back here in January 2020 and started a job at the Canadian Space Agency. So now I'm located in the Montreal area, and there I'm in their mechanical team as well as in satellite operations. So that's the job that I do now. The fun fact question always gets me. That's, you know, the people ask it every time. I never have a fun fact, but in my spare time, I guess I like to, I play hockey and I snowboard. And then during the pandemic, I know everybody got their own hobbies. Like I felt like a million people were baking bread and stuff like that. But I moved into a new apartment, so my thing was actually building a bunch of IKEA furniture was like the highlight of my week most times during the lockdown. So that's what I got to do, which is, you know, just Lego for adults. So it was kind of awesome. But yeah, that's me.
That is awesome. Thank you. Awesome. So we'll start with another sort of introductory question as well. How did your time at the University of Alberta prepare you for your engineering career or what you're doing at this point? And we can just kind of go in the same order. So, Inyani, do you want to start?
For sure. Next question, reverse order.
Okay,
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really involved question. and I don't know if I can do it justice, but one thing that I can say is that the engineering program requires a lot of hard work, and they really grill you in many, many ways. And by being able to come out of that at the other end, you become really resilient and able to do things and push yourself in ways that you might not have imagined that you could have at the beginning of the program or even during the program. So I find, although medicine is very different, and in some ways, especially with the pre-clerkship phase, in some aspects, the polar opposite of engineering education, that the ability to work hard is something that transfers easily, and you learn it's not something that everyone acquires during their time in the undergraduate or the master's degree. So I think that's my answer for now.
That's great. Thank you. Jason, could you go next?
Yeah, I think there are three things that stood out to me. One is just working with numbers. I think it's maybe intuitive or obvious for people working in engineering, but I think quite often when you step into the broader world, you realize a lot of people don't see numbers the same way that you do. So being comfortable with them and being able to use them in different ways, I think is certainly a huge benefit. Another huge thing about engineering, and I think this is in some ways unique to the U of A too, but working with others. So I think there was not a single class where I didn't learn from my classmates, right? Like it wasn't just going to a lecture and learning, but collaborating with friends and making new friends to get through engineering. That's something that's highly unique, I think, and you don't necessarily see in other programs where people do just go to class, go home. Maybe they have a few group projects, but the last thing I think is problem solving, and I think in many ways it is a bit of a cliche, because when I was in my undergrad, I remember I heard this quite often, and I didn't quite really grasp it, but going through engineering where you have to go through problem solving in a very structured way, where you lay out assumptions, lay out what things you know, what things you don't know, and then saying like, there are many things I don't know, but this is the conclusion I came to, and this is my justification. That's huge in this world, I think. So yeah, those three things I think are big takeaways.
Great, thank you. Kirtan, could you go next?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm still early in my career compared to the rest of you guys, but I think like what I'm noticing right away, that like a positive that I'm taking out of U of A engineering, is just the amount of stuff you're exposed to, whether that be in, any number of subsectors, not even within engineering as a whole, but within mechanical engineering. And it just gives you tool after tool after tool that you can use and draw from to solve the problems that are kind of thrown at us in industry or in research or wherever. So that's what I find is really helping. As well, I think just the breadth of opportunity in terms of how much extracurricular opportunity there is. Whether, for any interest in any skill level, you can get that kind of real world experience, which really translates quite well to, higher level industry, research again. So those are my big two takeaways, and personally. Yeah.
Thank you. And Tyler?
Yeah, I think all these guys really hit the nail on the head. I'm gonna have a tough time adding anything to that, but I kind of remember at the start of my engineering degree, my uncle's also an engineer, and he told me at the time, he said, when you get your degree in engineering, it's not a degree saying that like you're an engineer and you have all these formulas in your head and you're super smart and you know everything. Now, all it is a degree that says you know how to learn, right? So it's like, you know, you go through the process, you have to have a lot of resiliency. You got to be able to try things a million times and break down problems. And so what that does, at least for me, because I didn't excel academically. I always just kind of got by. And so what it does is you're going to be challenged, and it'll really like strip away your ego if you have one about, you know, any notions that you have about your academic success so far coming into the program. And that's a very good thing. And when that happens, you're going to need help. You're going to have to ask your professors. And then, like Jason said, you know, there's a lot of talking with your classmates and working with other people. So there's team dynamics involved. Like, I very much believe that engineering is definitely a team sport. So, you know, you got to have those interpersonal skills. You got to be able to figure out what somebody else knows about the problem, and then you can share what you know about the problem, and then you can kind of come to that solution together. So, and that's really the way, at least I've experienced it, that the real world works. In careers, you're operating in teams and everybody's kind of bringing a piece of the puzzle and you're all contributing together. So it's a really good opportunity to do that. So you can definitely go through your engineering degree without working in groups besides like the design courses you have to do, but I would definitely advise against that. I know it's harder right now in the pandemic times when everything's remote and stuff like that, but try to have a study group, try to have people you connect with to talk about what you learned in the lectures and hobbies and stuff like that. And it'll set you up really good for the real world. So, I mean, it can prepare you really well, but you also have to put a little bit of effort into that, I think.
That's great. Thank you all. I just want to say a quick reminder, who's here participating, please, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat and we'll organize them to ask after we go through some of the other ones that we have. But just a reminder to everyone who's listening in right now. So the next question I have is like a little bit related to the graduation process, since that's like what we're focusing on at this event. And it's basically, how did you guys get your initial job right out of university? Or for Inyani, how did you go through that like med school application process? So whether that's like you were networking within LinkedIn or like whatever you did to actually get that step, because I know it's really different depending on which job you go into and stuff like that. So yeah, like how did that process work for you right out of your degree? And since Inyani asked me to go the other way around, I'm going to start with Tyler.
Thanks, Inyani. So for me, at the end of, I think like most people, or at least at the time, like when I was at the U of A, I had the idea that I would go through my degree and then I would end up working in oil and gas. Like I think most engineers are in the energy sector at least. And maybe I had that bias just because that's where most of my family worked and everything like that. And even though I wasn't that interested in it, I thought that was really like my only option. And so while I was at the university, I was part of the Alberta SAT group and we worked on Cube satellite. And so I got really interested in space. And even though I was really heavily involved with that project, I really was still not convinced until the last half year before graduation that I could actually have a career in the space industry, because there's no aerospace program, there's no space engineering program at the U of A. So I didn't have the educational background. I only had the experience from the project. And so I applied to like 100 jobs in the energy sector, trying to get a job there, and didn't get an interview for any of them. I had no experience for it. My grades weren't good enough. There were always these candidates better than me. And I thought, okay, I have no option now but to try to get a job in the space industry, which is actually what I wanted. So it gave me an excuse to search for that. So I contacted, so the company I got the job with, I applied for, they're a small satellite provider in the Netherlands, and they had provided some components on our satellite that we had built. So I already had contacts there. I had a network there. And so I set up an interview with them. They knew me already. So this is the networking effect that you should be working on while you're in university, because it can pay big dividends when you go to graduate. And they already knew me. The interview went great. And then I got hired on there, and I worked there. I did the interviews for the Canadian Space Agency in my last semester of university as well, but the government's very slow, which is why they took 1.5 years to offer me a job. So I did that at the same time, but that was also because I was in the extracurricular program I was in. So they had all these applicants and they picked me to be interviewed because I had that extra experience. So all of my opportunity that I've had from the previous job and this job came from the student vehicle project that I did while I was in university. So I would recommend that. And then those opportunities are going to kind of arise naturally through your network.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense with the networking stuff. I think that's pretty much the key to get something very unique out of university. So thank you. Kirtan, could you go next?
Yeah, it's kind of funny I'm going after Tyler because I was also in Alberta set. But yeah, I mean, just not to repeat everything you said, but kind of the same thing about using that extracurricular to start building your network. I focused, I wasn't just in Alberta set, I was like aero heavy lift, as well as some other space related research topics. And through all of those, I found myself traveling to like conferences and meeting like industry leaders, and half the time they'd be like, "Oh, you're a student. I'm just going to pretend to listen to you and move on somewhere else." But I mean, you do that enough times, and people start to recognize you, which is what I found. And so when I applied to MDA, I actually didn't hear back for quite a while. Hit up some of my contacts that I had made through these conferencing events, and was a little bit, I won't use the word annoying, but persistent maybe. Constantly emailing them, trying to figure out what the deal was. And then they offered me an interview, went great. I think they were surprised at how enthusiastic and I don't know. Yeah, it was a weird interview. But yeah, and then you just kind of build on those connections, keep in touch, and then they offered me the job, and after I graduated, managed to start and stay here. So that's kind of where I was. But yeah, essentially, same thing. Like I thought I was going to end up in energy, but I really wanted something aerospace related. I was really adverse to applying to energy jobs just because it just didn't interest me personally. So I really spent a ton of time hitting up all those contacts and being persistent and kind of trying to make something for myself and see where that would get me. And fortunately, it worked. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, so I have a few thoughts on this, and I think I'm going to try to answer your question a bit indirectly. Because I partly think that quite often when you look for advice and like attend events like this, you hear from people who've in some ways like been successful, right? And in that sense, there's a bit of a bias in in the advice that you get. I truthfully think that getting like finding a job is really down to luck. I think like Tyler said, I think all of us probably have applied to tens, hundreds of things, and haven't heard from any of them. But the more you apply to, the higher the chances that you do get a call back, right? I think that's pretty persistent, and as an individual, then the best thing you can think of is just how to increase your chances of getting that call back and getting an interview. So I think the other two have already spoken to being involved in extracurriculars. I think I myself, that's something that was very core to my university experience. But I also recognize not everybody has the ability to or the time to. So I would just say, in general, while you're in university, a job is still kind of a few years down the line, but even if you don't have time to get involved, just start learning, start reading about what you're interested in, or read about anything and find what you're interested in. Go to events that you can, just explore topics, find a project you can work on. Like maybe it's just writing a blog about something, right? And who cares? Maybe no one's going to read it, but you going through those steps really teaches you a lot about what's happening in the world, and makes it a lot easier for you to talk about it and also to like define what you care about. The last thing I would say about this is just sharing that you're looking for a job or sharing your interests is also really huge. So my current job I actually almost missed, but a former colleague of mine said, "Hey Jason, like this is closing tomorrow. Did you apply for it already?" And because of a lot of government things, and government's not always slow, I want to say that to Tyler, government's not always slow, but this year, for many reasons, government job postings were only being posted for a week. And that week, I happened to be defending my master's thesis, so I wasn't even paying attention to looking for jobs. But my former colleague knew that I was graduating soon and reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you looking?" And in the last couple of months, I've been thinking too, I come across a lot of job opportunities, like including entry-level job opportunities, but I realized I actually don't even know who would want one of them. Like, usually when I see one of these, I say to myself, like, who might be interested, so I can forward it along to them. But the ones that I do forward it to are ones who've said publicly somewhere or messaged me and just said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." I think it feels very, what's the word for this? Like, it's very hard to ask for that kind of help and say, like, I'm looking for a job. Like, I myself struggle with this. But honestly, I think being on the other side, it's something that I wish more people did. So I can send them all these really cool openings. So I want good people to be matched with good jobs.
Awesome, thank you. And Inyani, for like medical, the admission process there.
Yeah, sure. I think I can speak to similar experiences that these guys have brought up as well, and maybe trying to tackle the question dropped by Adnan on the periphery. So yeah, I think when I entered, I always knew prior to engineering that my why, I guess, and this was something I read on one of the other panelists, and I'm sure everyone would love to talk about that, and I want to hear. But my why was I knew that health and the health space was where I wanted to be. However, I also tools that engineering provided was what I wanted and the path that I wanted to get there. So I wanted to tackle health problems through the use of engineering tools. So that was always in the back of my mind, and that's why I entered the biomed stream. And interestingly, in that year, they kind of canceled the biomed stream for every single department but mechanical and engineering, and I was keen on electrical. So it was a bit of a issue, but it was revolved. And I guess this is where the story begins. So you have to be persistent, right? So I knew that that's what I wanted. And even though this program was canceled, I went and talked to the deans and the associate deans, and I was able to kind of carve out a niche space. So in my year, I ended up being the only person to graduate from the electrical biomedical stream. And even then, it was not a guarantee, right? So I was told that if any of the courses became unavailable, and most of them were in the third or the fourth year, then I would have to take an extra semester and graduate in the traditional electrical stream, right? But I knew that's what I wanted, and it was a chance that I was willing to take. The other thing is I was also I'm drawn to the energy sector, and that's because that's where all the jobs were, right? So Alberta is not known to be a huge biomedical hub. Now it's changing, but that was not the case when I was going through school. So around my third year or so, I think I had Googled like engineering or electrical engineering firms in Edmonton and in Calgary, and I kid you not, on my time this, 24 hours in my car, driving from every single firm and dropping off my resume in Edmonton and then in Calgary, a whole day in my car. And I didn't hear back from anyone for quite some time. And finally, I think of all the places I had applied, only 3 got back to me. Unfortunately, the economy during that time was not the best, and the opportunities that were open quickly closed, right? So that was kind of frustrating. But what I've come to realize is usually when a door or hundreds of doors close, at least one opens in some other direction. So a professor that taught me open or had some positions in his lab, and he wanted to interview anyone that was interested in that space. So he was in the robotics sector, but focusing on the biomedical realm. Yeah, so I applied, and lo and behold, I got the position. I spent my summer there, and it was a really pivotal experience for myself because I was doing what I wanted. I was doing engineering, and I was applying it to the health space. So we were designing surgical tools for prostate cancer, and that was phenomenal. And to speak to involvement, which a few of the other individuals here talked about, I wasn't involved in student groups, but I did do the Dean's Research Award a handful of times, and that's how I kind of I kept myself preoccupied. I'm interested in research in a lot of the biomedical spaces were in that area, and this was a channel that I had access to that. So by doing that, I was able to come in contact with the lab that I eventually did my master's in, so the Bionic Limbs for Improved Natural Controls lab, and they just saw some of the projects I did. They were impressed. They asked if I wanted to do a project with them, and I did. It went well, and I ended up pursuing my master's there. And in that master's, right, it was never really the plan to do a master's, if I'm going to be honest, right? We all have that mentality in and out, but it kind of happened, and I took the opportunity, and it was a good time. So specifically, I had a chance to network with a variety of individuals, medical students, residents, surgeons, engineers, computer scientists, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, and it really expanded my worldview, and it allowed me to know that yes, there is a space in which you can engineer and focus on health or the human body. It also showed me a lot that I did not know, and a lot that I'm engineering for my specific interest could not offer, and that was the understanding of the human body. Right, we're taught about a lot of things, but not that. So that kind of popped in med school, but said, yeah. With that being said, by the end of the program, and I'm almost done. At the end of the program, I had decided, you know what? Why don't I apply to med school and see if that's the path for me? But I also had learned that, yeah, don't just limit yourself to one or two doors, right? So I also applied to do my PhD, and fortunately, it panned out. I received a position in mechanical engineering, focusing on biomedical work in Toronto, and I was accepted into a med school in Calgary. So at that point, I sat down, thought, I'm like, hey, how can I kind of combine both of these? And if you go into medicine, you still have the option to do your PhD. It's a lot of school, but if that's what you want to do, that option is there. So that's kind of the path that I find myself in now. So I think, yeah, that's my response to your question. I'm a bit long-winded, but.
That's great. Thank you, Inyani. That's interesting that you're still thinking about a PhD next. You must really not be sick of school, which is incredible. And something that Inyani kind of talked about when he was going through is something like about your why, like why you want to work on stuff and why you want to go through, towards certain careers. So I'm thinking we can kind of move to a question about that next. And how I want to phrase it is like, how did you guys know that the jobs that you took out of graduation was the job that you wanted to take? And like, did you guys ever hesitate when you were selecting the job? Did you have any second thoughts about like, maybe there's something else that I want to work on? And how did you go through that like thought process? And maybe also like, how far out do you plan in your head? Like, do you think this is what I want right now? And like, I kind of know what I want in 5 years? Or have you all just kind of thought this is like what I want right now, and whatever happens next happens next? I know that was a lot of random stuff, but just something on that thread would probably be helpful for a lot of people here. So should I go in the same order again? I don't know if I should just mix it up. I feel bad now. Does anyone want to
skip?
Just go random?
Yeah, 2 to the end, and 2 to the end plus 1, whatever you want.
I have all your names here. I'll just like shuffle. Okay. Well, let's start with Jason this time.
All right, great. So I think the question of why is really huge. And I think, first of all, it differs for every person, and the way of discovering a why is different for every person. But I think I wrote in my advice thing here before the event that if you can figure out like what will get you out of the bed in the morning, you're probably on a good path. And I always think about how I think the Engineering Employment Center, I think Stacy might be in the chat here now, but they asked me once upon a time like what I thought about personal branding, and I think typically people, when talking about personal branding, talk about like LinkedIn, talk about I don't know, like how to dress even, which is important. But I thought a bit about that question, and I realized the most important thing to me for personal branding was figuring out that why, figuring out exactly what it is that drives you and potentially separates you from other people. I think it's also something that you can carry on into your job, right? Like if you figure out that why and find a job that you really like, then you're going to enjoy every moment of it and perform probably better than others. And yeah, I also recognize it's a privileged thing to be able to do, work on something that's aligned to your why. But truthfully, I don't quite know how to discover that. I think a lot of how I developed mine was I had a grade 6 elementary teacher that had a huge impact on my life, who empowered me to show that like if I wanted to do something, I could achieve it. Showed me, yeah, like almost anything's possible, right? So that teacher made a huge impact on me, and also got me thinking a lot about renewables and the climate crisis that we're in. Beyond that, I think for me, it's also about a lot of reading, seeing what other people's perspectives of the world are, and then taking time to reflect. I think, I don't know, maybe like I hear that reflection isn't something a lot of people do, but for the people around me, it is something that is common. So if you don't already take some time, even every couple of months, just to like literally just sit there and think about your life and think about what you want, you could try that. And I think it might help. But if somebody does figure out a way to just help others find meaning easily, please let me know before you write a $1 million book and get rich. I'd like a piece of that pie.
That's brilliant. And we were looking for like when you were making the decision on the job that you got right out of university, did you have any second thoughts about it? And were you sure that it would be the next step for you right out of school?
Yeah, I think there's always that sort of doubt because there's so many possibilities. I think, okay, so I have two answers. I have a normal person answer, and then I have like I was reading a book about probability yesterday answer. So normal answer is like, honestly, trust your gut, right? It might be biased, but a mentor once told me, even if you make an irrational decision, it might be one that you're still irrationally comfortable with, right? Like, don't overthink it, and just go with whatever decision you made. It's never too late in our lives to change direction. Yesterday, I think I also came across, I can't even remember where now, but somebody pitched this idea of how, like, if it only takes a few thousand hours to get good at something within a lifetime, like you have a lot of opportunities to get good at a lot of things, right? Like every couple of years, you can change directions completely and make a huge impact on whatever field that is, which is quite exciting, I think. The decisions you've made in the past don't influence the decisions that you make, or like don't influence things that will happen in the future, or like there are a few asterisks, but in investing, what is that called? It's some kind of bias. I'm sure one of the
Like
other...
sunk costs in economics, or no?
Sorry?
You mean like the concept of sunk costs in economics?
Yeah, the sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, right. Like, don't worry about that, right? Like, recognize it is a fallacy and just make whatever decision you think is the best for you now and in the future. Don't think about the past. So the other nerdy answer is, if you think about everything that happens in life as just like a random chance occurring on some probability curve, whatever decision you make, like lands somewhere on this, right? Like maybe there's like an 80% chance that given whatever circumstances you were in, you would have made one decision. In a parallel universe, you would have gone the other way, right? Or in all of the parallel universes, like you have to fill in all the space on the probability curve. So like it doesn't, it doesn't really matter. Everything happens like kind of had to happen. Maybe there's a meaning for it, maybe there wasn't, but I don't really think too much about is this going to be a wrong decision. I kind of just think about like, does it align with what I think now? And as I go, I continue doing what I do, which is thinking ahead. One of your questions was how far ahead do you look? So I have like I have a general life plan, I guess, filled with a few different possibilities. And it sort of ties to the content of my master's and like planning for different scenarios. But it's not like a playbook for me, right? It's just me writing down some things that I once realized when I was reflecting, and then that I can continue to revisit, and every once in a while be like, well, this goal in my life has changed, and I'll make adjustments. So I don't say like by this age, I want to be working for this organization for like with this job title, and a lot of people do, and I think it's fine. But for me, it's more just like these are the problems I want to solve. These are the skills I have. These are the skills I don't have. Which directions could I go? And what skills will that bring to me? And how can I use them?
That's awesome. That makes sense. Thank you so much for that answer. Let's go with Kirtan next.
I think I'm really glad we're talking about like the question of why you choose engineering or choose a specific area of what you're going to focus on. So the group of friends that I started hanging out with at school, which is just my high school at university, which is just my high school group. Not to like trash the typical engineering attitude of I know best and everyone else is wrong, but they were kind of more aligned with that. And these guys are all really smart people and 4.0s and but when people would ask, oh, why did you choose engineering versus science or business or what have you, 90% of the time they'd be like, oh, you get paid well. And for some people that might be okay, and I'm not gonna say that's wrong or something, but I think when you're asking why, I think if you have a passion, I don't think financial success, and this is me personally, my 2 cents, I don't think financial success is just exclusively limited to what the traditional areas to obtain that are. I think if you're passionate about something and usually you're good at something you're passionate about, you're going to be successful. So like one of the things I wrote in my little blurb thing is kind of have that area that, as Jason said, gets you out of bed in the morning, right? And the cool thing with engineering is that it covers such a wide range of stuff. You can be as vague or as specific as you want, and there's going to be something related to engineering or even any other degree that you can use it. So one of my buddies, he is really interested in climbing, and he wants to use his mechanical engineering degree to make new climbing gear, for example, right? And there's not a lot of jobs where you can go and become an engineer to build and design climbing gear, but it gives him a kind of direction that he can kind of focus on and kind of look to in the future to kind of start to slowly shift into that area or see where it takes him, right? I know, on the other hand, I know a lot of my peers, again, they would literally spit out 4.0s wherever they wanted. They got a good job right out of university, and now they're just kind of like, well, did I work this hard and I'm just doing something I'm really not interested in? Like, so they're kind of in this place where, they're asking these really tough questions. Like, did I go into the right, did I go into the right field? Did I do the right thing? Did I make the right choice? My whole thing, I think, I don't know if there's any, in that respect, I don't know if second guessing is the right thing, just because any choice that you make, even if it turns out it was the wrong choice, you still have that experience. And I think there's, for the most part, that experience, whether it was good or was bad, it's going to help you. I know personally, before I even knew I wanted to do something in space or aerospace, I was like, I just need to find a job for the summer. I don't care what it is. Ended up working construction, doing survey actually, and I hated it. But looking back, years from now or years after that, I'm so glad that I did it, just because I got that experience, which I'm never going to get ever again doing what I'm doing now. And you kind of get that, even that it doesn't directly apply, you have that kind of knowledge of how that side of things work, right? This is a field job. This is kind of how the thought process is, and you could draw up lessons from that to other facets of your life or other experiences. I think when we're asking the question of determining that why, that's almost like super philosophical. And as Jason said, if you have the book on that, give me a piece of that too. But I think one quote that's popping into my head right now. I don't know if anybody here watches The Expanse. I don't know, space TV show essentially, but there's a quote in a recent episode where the guy says something along the lines of, it's almost, you could approach life or a decision or an event, and you could try to plan out every possibility and map that out. You have some sort of success, and figure out every sort of permutation of every sort of random event that's going to happen, try to quantify your life how it's going to go that way. But in a sense, it's almost more nobler to kind of throw yourself into the unknown and see where you get out, because you don't know where you're going to get spat out, and you don't know what lessons you're going to learn along the way. So I think, just finding those experiences where you're like, hey, I haven't tried this before, why not? Right? If I don't like it, I don't like it, but at least I'll have this experience, which, hey, it might be at the end is a funny story you could tell at the bar when the bar's open. But it's something that adds to kind of that, right? And you don't like it, so you don't like it, and it kind of narrows down. And the more experiences you have, you kind of get narrowed down to what your passion is or why you want to do engineering or whatever it is. Kind of a weird angled response, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. I guess the other part of the question was like how far in the future. Personally, for me, just because the project I'm working on has like a very defined end date, that's kind of personally where I'm at, is kind of looking at that date and saying, hey, I'm going to reevaluate where I am in life. Again, I think it's just a matter of kind of setting a goal for yourself and just accepting the fact that attaining that goal or attaining whatever definition of success you've set for yourself isn't ever going to be a straight line. Right. And I know it's a cliche, we've all heard it before, but you kind of have to accept the fact that that's what's going to happen, right? I thought I was going to go to university for 5 years and, you know, have a bunch of co-op jobs and then do something after. I ended up taking some semesters off. I took an extra year just to, you know, take extra courses and stuff like that. I never expected to do that, but because I kind of threw myself in there and kind of accepted that fact that, hey, it takes different people, different times, different pathways to get to whatever their success is, you know, just accept that fact. The other quote I like is, you know, in the end, it'll all be all right. If it's not all right, then it's not the end.
Oh, Kirtan, I think you muted yourself right after you said that. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
You're back.
I'm almost done, but yeah, cool. Where was I? But yeah, just kind of taking those baby steps every day or every week or whenever you want, trying to get to whatever your definition of success is. And I don't think that can define a certain timeline for you, but I think it does map out where you want to go eventually. That's my 2 cents. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you both. It was very well thought out and I like how philosophical things are getting. It's very helpful for everyone to kind of think through like that. So let's go with Tyler next, if that was good.
Sure. Yeah. I think I also have, like these two guys, like a lot of thoughts on this. And I've thought about it a lot, and then everything they said, I've kind of wanted to like add my own little perspective to it and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to get everything in and not go too much all over the place, but I'm sure there's some things I'll forget that I'll want to say later at some point, because I think it's incredibly important. This is probably one of the most important questions you're going to ask yourself. And it's something that I still struggle with all the time. It's a question, like I'm converging on the same truth that these guys are, but it's still something that I have to challenge my own beliefs on it every single day. Why am I doing what I do? And do I like what I do? You know, all the time. And basically my journey thus far with finding my why is, I remember when I was 7 years old, my dad was a millwright in the energy sector. So he just didn't even finish high school. And he was working in the oil fields, and he saw that all the engineers he was just kind of jealous of their life. He just saw they were really successful and stuff like that. And so he told me, he said, you're going to be an engineer because then you're going to have a good life. And I was 7 years old. I just said, okay, Dad, I guess I'll go do that. Like, I didn't really think twice about it. And he was my dad. He knew everything. So I said, and that's just kind of what I assumed until I was in high school. And then I got the grades to go be an engineer. I never really questioned it. And then I mentioned before I was an engineer, so I assumed I was going to go into the energy sector. And then a combination of things happened for me in that, you know, I was involved in Alberta SAT because it actually interested me. And then some of the things I was learning in my courses didn't interest me very much, like all the examples that you get on your exams with pumps and everything and stuff like that from the oil field. I was like, I'd be doing the question, I'd be like, this sucks. Like, I don't really like this that much. So then I kind of realized there was a divergence between kind of what I wanted to do and what I was doing with my degree. And I think it wasn't until my 4th year, you get your Eng 400 course, and Dean Forbes is a regular speaker in that class. And I remember him saying one time, and I'll never forget it. He's just like, he said, I know so many engineers that didn't do what they wanted to do, and they got amazing jobs, and they made tons of money, you know, 6 figures, whatever. They're living the dream. But they work 70-hour weeks, and then they try to build their deck on the weekend, and they have no time to spend with their families, and they hate their lives. So he told us that. And then I kind of had a moment of truth there. I'm like, is that what I want? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. Like, it seems like the safe thing. It seems like the thing you should do. It seems like, I don't know. So I really had to question myself then. And then kind of the thing since that point. And so it's funny because like Jason talked about earlier, the bias of success. So just to talk about my story getting hired earlier, the job I got offered in the Netherlands was the only one I got. So even if I hated it, I had to take it anyway. Otherwise I would have been unemployed. So it's like, it seemed successful, but that was my only option. So it's good that I ended up really liking it. And I think a couple of things that I ask myself when you're trying to figure out your why is you want to figure out like, what are some, I think of like, when I think of identity, like who you are, I think of it like as layers of an onion, right? And so like things build on top of each other, and you can find kind of what's really at the core of who you are if you look really deeply and take, you know, moments to reflect and think about what you enjoy in life and what you would like. A really good question is, if you had $1 billion, didn't have to work, what would you do every day? You know, just kind of think about that. Like, what would you get up and do? And I think for me, kind of what I figured out is, my first thought was I would love to travel. I'd love to go explore. I'd love to go see every country. I'd meet every person, try every food, do it. And I'm very much like I like to do that exploring mixed with getting outside of my comfort zone and having new experiences and stuff like that. So that has nothing to do with engineering, but it's something that I feel like is a core part of my identity. So then I have to ask myself, you have this incredible tool that's an engineering degree. And instead of basing your identity around being an engineer, it's like, I'm an engineer, so I should go do this. What you should be asking yourself is, who am I, and how can I use my engineering degree as a tool, as a force multiplier for doing what I already like to do? And how can I not only do that for myself, but then bring it to, you know, society and as many people as possible? So then for me, if I define my why, if I think like I'm an explorer and I like going out there and trying new things, it makes sense for me to be in the space industry, because then I'm contributing to that on a human scale, right? So if I contribute to projects where as humanity, if I think of humanity as like my identity core, we're all like exploring now. And so it kind of gives me an intrinsic motivation, because even if you're in a job that you love, you're going to have days that suck at work. And, you know, it keeps, like Jason said, what gets you out of bed in the morning, it kind of gets you out of bed, and you can contribute to that, and you can do that. And so that's why I think it's important also to, you know, your whole life for 4 or 5 years is going to be around getting an engineering degree, but your identity shouldn't be that. Your identity shouldn't be, you know, I am an engineer. My identity should be, I'm Tyler. I have an engineering degree that's a tool to make, like, you know, to really, again, act as a force multiplier for things that I like to do. And so that's really important. And you don't want to limit yourselves to just traditional approaches, right? Like, any industry, you can go to almost any industry and they need engineers. Like, you've got big banks down in the US hiring engineers just because of their analytical skills and stuff like that. So there's probably so many places you can go to get a job that you don't know of yet. And there's industries that don't have engineers that probably need one, just because you have those problem solving abilities. And if there's nothing that really floats your boat when you get out of your degree, you can create it. You know, you have all the skills to do that. As well. So, I mean, yeah, the question of why is really important, and you have to ask it to yourself all the time. And then if you don't know what it is, or you don't have that kind of core identity layer that I found out that I had with exploring, then like the others have said, you want to just try as many things as possible. Every single decision you make in life is just like, it's just like energy. You're going to get a reaction. You're going to get some sort of feedback, right? So if you go and try something, you're going to find out you don't like that thing. So you can eliminate a lot of things in that category and go try something else. And then it acts like a funnel, right? You might bounce back and forth, not know what you're doing, just trying all these things. But eventually you're going to like converge on something, because it's all going to give you feedback. So it's also important, like, to just try things for the sake of trying them. Again, earlier, Jason said, like, just write a blog, even if no one reads it. Like, that's awesome. Do that. At least you're not doing nothing. And then you find out more about yourself, right? So, and then you get out of your comfort zone. And and even if you fail doing a bunch of stuff, like, I can kind of look back and see that everything that kind of good that happened to me in my career or my life, I can all trace back to like when I took a risk and I wasn't that sure if it was going to work out or anything. And you can't have success without the chance of failure. So it's like you have to kind of make a decision, try something, risk failing, and you're gonna fail a lot along the way too while you're kind of discovering your why. The thing is, I know I failed a bunch of times, but I can barely remember any of them. It's hard for me to tell you. I know they happened, but I can't really remember them because the times you did succeed is going to outweigh that by a million. So, I mean, you just have to try things, figure out what you like, be okay with failing. And then it's you can boil that whole process down. It's the same thing as solving a hard engineering problem. There's going to be 20 ways it doesn't work, and you got to find all of them. And eventually you're going to solve the problem. And then you're going to figure out what you should do kind of with your life and the jobs you should go after and stuff like that. So you can use all the things, again, your degree preparing you for life after your degree. You can use a lot of the tactics and strategies and just solving those problems as being analogous to your life as well. And then also, I think another important thing, just to get on the topic of mindfulness, I know like, yeah, we were talking a little bit about philosophy and stuff like that. Like, so my little take on that is that I'm a big subscriber to Stoicism, if anybody has ever like read anything to do with that. And that's just basically really simply defining what you can control and what you can't control, right? So like, and you never tell my manager this, but like, I am okay every single day I wake up, I'm okay getting fired from my job. Like, that's fine. That's out of my control because I know that I'm going to show up and I'm going to do my best. So if I show up and I do my best and I get everything wrong all day, and, you know, I'm no use to the CSA and they have to fire me, I can sleep like a baby at night because I know I got up and I did my best. And that I'm going to do my best whether I get everything right all day or whether I get everything wrong all day. And so if you go out there and you do your best to find your why and you don't find it, you might not find it for a long time. You might not find it for years, but you should have peace knowing that as long as you tried your hardest, there was nothing more that you could do. And that should be enough to kind of sleep easy at night. And then to tag that on to the last part of your question, I don't particularly have a 5-year plan. I think my thing is I'm just going to get up and like do my best with what I have every day. And then, but the thing is, I always kind of keep my eyes open for other opportunities and other options. You don't ever want to close doors. You want to know all the doors that are open around you. And so if one day there's that door open that kind of, you know, facilitates my why a little bit better, then I'll probably go that route. But I just haven't seen that yet. And until I see that road, I'm going to just keep on doing what I'm doing here. So that's kind of as much planning as I do every day.
Thank you. I really think we should change our room name to like philosophical talks and motivational speeches, because I think that's what we're getting today, and it's great. Awesome. So Inyani, could you finish up kind of answering similar questions?
Yeah, sure. I think these guys have done a fantastic job answering the question, and I don't know if there's too much I can add. So if I could just highlight some key points and try to be a bit succinct so I don't repeat what has already been said. Like the key things for me are when you're looking for your why. For some people, they know quite early on, and for others, they kind of discover it along the way, right? So it was mentioned that you should explore and look around and so on. For myself personally, I'm gonna say that I was fortunate enough to have an idea of what interested me quite early on, and this didn't mean that I knew how to make it a career, but I knew I was interested in it. So I recall, I think, as Jason mentioned, in like 6th grade, I was sitting down and they were talking to us about electricity and magnetism, and then I think my teacher at that time talked about prostheses and how you can use the electricity in the human body to control those prostheses, and that kind of that sparked this interest that persisted for so long. So when I went to high school, not a lot of people, or I think I'm the first person in my family to go into university, and the first person to go into engineering, and now the first person to go into medicine, right? So when I was in high school, I was the first person to take physics, right? And I took physics because I wanted to know more about electricity, and I also took biology because I wanted to know more about the electricity within the body, right? And it was just like this interest of like, what is this thing, and how can I and how can it be both within the body and in this external world that we inhabit in? Like we all know here, the electricity that powers our lights is the same force that powers our brains, and as a result allows us to move our muscles, right? And I kept on the interest persisted, and I found myself pursuing a master's in essentially the same area that was initially brought up to me, right? So my thesis, or like the lab I worked in, was doing just that, right? And we were developing prostheses where they use the electricity within your body to control these external factors, right? So to step away from that, I think really it's like you have a gut interest, and if you have that, don't ignore it. Even though you might not see how it might develop into a career, it is something that will add value to your life. And if you're fortunate enough to combine it with your career, fantastic. But if you don't have that opportunity, that's okay too. You can work and sustain yourself, but still be able to pursue other interests. It works out for some people, but not for everyone, and nor should it, right? So we don't all have the same pathway, and nor should we expect that. So yeah, I find myself still pursuing that, but along the way you find mentors too. And I think that was mentioned in people that tell you, yeah, you know, that's cool that you're interested in that. Have you realized that with this, you know, this interest in electricity and magnetism, you can use that to learn electronics, and that electronics allows you or opens the gates to software, right? Or the other way, it allows you to enter this space of electrophysiology and understand heart mechanics better than someone that does not have that understanding of physics, or it allows you to be in this niche where you're able to enter this world of brain-computer interface, right? So even though the interest started with prostheses, still you're able to use other devices, whether it's EEGs or more interestingly, implantable devices, which can be connected directly to nerves or into your cortex or your brain to extract signals, right? And it's just wild to think due to those mentors and the exploration that you you go upon trying to pursue whatever interest that you have, you're able to be pushed into all these different directions, and you see other people that have similar interests, maybe with a different flavor, and you're able to learn from them too, right? So that you can kind of mold that interest into something that's a bit more mature, something that maybe is a bit more practical, whether it's in the career sense or in other capacities, right? So I really do think a question of why is probably the most important thing that you should take away from this session, it'll take you a long way, right? Whether it give you a reason to get out of bed or just to enjoy what you're doing, right? And I think many of these guys, maybe I can't speak for them, but for myself, for sure, right? I would be studying the things that I'm studying, whether I'm being paid, and I'm not being paid, right? Or not. It's a genuine interest. I go out of my way to make sure that I keep up to date. What's happening in the world? Who's making the big splash in these arenas? What are the books to read? Right? Where is this interest going to take me? Where is the future? Where was the past? I want to know it all, right? And I think if you find something like that, then yeah, that's something that's worth keeping. And more than that, surround yourself with people that talk like that too, right? So you have, if you can find people that are engaged in energy, right, or in space, or in physics, math, in biology, in accounting, in arts, in drama, in scuba diving, whatever it is, but the way that they talk about it, like, you know that they're really interested, it rubs off. And I think, yeah, I've been fortunate to be surrounded by many people like that. I think Alicia mentioned that we knew each other prior to this, and she has a very interesting story as well. And I'm sad that she's not speaking. But the thing is, I'm sure that all these other guys can talk about all the other people that surround them and influence them, and the passions that they have, and how all of that kind of works to kind of compound and push you guys all forward, right? And that starts with developing those groups in your engineering or in your time in engineering, right? And you find the people that are interested in math and physics or just the engineering, or very practical or business minded, right? And once you start to develop those networks persist, and you guys continue to push each other more, and you learn from each other. So really take the time to sit down, take the time to reflect, and figure out, is there something that like burns at you that you can not live without, or is there a possibility or an opportunity to find out what that is for yourself, right? And if not, are there people in your life that do have that fire, right? And talk to them to see how they developed that fire, how they found it, and how they're maintaining it, because you have to maintain it as well, right? So I think that's it for me in terms of future planning. Yeah, I'll try to be short. I'm notorious. I plan 10 years in advance, and that's been the case, I think, for like the longest time, and it's becoming harder. If I'm going to be honest, because now I start. Earlier on, it worked in my benefit. I mean, in the sense that, yeah, I'm accounting 4 years in engineering. I'm out. Okay, I'll tack on 2 years for a master's. I'm out. Okay, you know what? I'll tack on 4 more years for a PhD. But now I'm all right. So 4 years of med school, and then the 4 years of the PhD, then 5 to 6 years of residency, and then it starts to kind of weigh on you, right? So more and more, I think I'm taking a similar approach to what these guys have mentioned. I have a general idea of where I want to be, but I'm trying to appreciate the moment a bit more and focus here, because I could plan 10, 20 years in advance, and that can cause me anxiety, or I could just appreciate what's going on and realize that I've done all I can do, and now the rest is due to time, right? So yeah, that's essentially it. So plan. I'm not saying don't plan, but yeah, also be able to relieve yourself of that stress and the anxiety that comes with things not panning out exactly how you expected it to.
Awesome, thank you.
Can I throw in one thing?
Of course.
Just to follow up what Inyani said. So also in N100 in my last year, sorry, N400, Dean Forbes said you should think of grad school as a job. It's not just more school. And I really want to emphasize that. I think Inyani said, in a way, you don't get paid for school. But I do think PhD, at least, is definitely, in a way, like a job, right? Definitely not a lifelong career. You should finish as soon as you can. But it gives you valuable experience, and in many cases, it does pay. Like I heard at the U of T, if you TA for Eng 100, and I think you have to be a PhD student, but you get paid $44 an hour. Just saying.
Wow.
It pays.
That's awesome. Thank you for the addition. Yeah, thank you guys so much for those answers. I think that's really good. Let's move to a couple of the questions that are in the chat. So first one here, what would you guys recommend for traditional students with no co-op or work experience to help them find a job? Just like maybe the top thing that you would think would help. I'll ask each of you again, but if you don't have anything and it's redundant, you guys don't have to answer. We can just move through a different question too. So let's just start. I don't remember where I started last time. Let's start with Kirtan, because I don't think I've started with you yet.
Sounds good. You recommend. So yeah, I don't know how to answer this because I don't want to assume if you're like already graduated or if you're still in school. I think so I was traditional as well, but I kind of made that choice almost near. So I was in co-op, and then due to a number of factors, ended up in traditional. I think you just kind of have to, again, find that why and kind of where you want to end up, and then start. I know we're being redundant and stuff, but like start to like take those baby steps, right? Um, I don't know, and I mean this won't work for everybody, of course, and everyone has different needs and whatever. But you I don't know if you could really push it per se. Maybe you have to take those baby steps of trying to find contacts, or as Jason was saying, start showing some sort of initiative that you're doing on your own, whether it's writing a blog, or Inyani brought out a robot, whether if robotics is your thing, start to show that you can. Yeah, okay, you might not have like a job that you could throw on a resume, but at least you can say, hey, I've taken some free time, I've used my skills to apply it to something practical, and here's the product, and here's something you can see. So I think there's a lot of like opportunities for self-starting. If you're still, again, don't want to assume, but if you're still in school, the thing I liked with traditional, and again, very personal thing, worked for me, was that traditional was very flexible. So if I wanted to take a semester off and go work at a company, I could. And I think a lot of people in traditional, at least when I was in school, I wanted to see more people kind of with that attitude, just knowing that you don't have to finish at a specific time, other than the 7 or 8 years or whatever it is. But you could take your time, do what works for you, and start to take those little steps. Well, I have some friends who were in traditional, couldn't do like a summer job or extracurriculars, um, and same thing, just figure out where you want to do, or what you want to do, or what interests you, and start to find something that you can do. Everyone's at home and has free time now, so maybe use like 20 minutes a day, even just reading about the new technologies that are being developed, or doing something for yourself that, yes, it betters you and your skills and what but it also shows when you're at an interview or something, that you have been bettering yourself. You're not just relying on the structure of school or co-ops or internships. You're kind of looking outside of the box for opportunities like that. So yeah, and everybody's different. That's just what I've learned from being doing traditional.
Awesome. Thank you. Tyler, do you have anything to add to that?
Only a little bit. I think I'm kind of the same mind in that, if you don't have to be paid or have a job to participate in the activity of engineering. So if you can't find a job, like, you should be doing a little project or tinkering or something like that. I think if you go to a job interview and somebody sees a gap in employment and stuff like that, and they kind of ask you what you did with that time, the worst thing is to have nothing to show for it. At least you could say like, oh, I did this, I made this little thing, I participated in this, I joined and volunteered in this team. And even with that said, it doesn't even have to be engineering. It could be like, I got my engineering degree and I felt like I knew all that, but I wanted to kind of explore some other thing and make myself a more well-rounded person. So I joined a book club, and I was totally dedicated to this book club. Something like that, just to show that you're active, and just because you didn't have a job, you focused on self-improvement. That's going to really help in an interview when you eventually do get it. And yeah, what else? So, and then, yeah, like, persistence is definitely good. Like, I really like Inyani's story about like driving around for 24 hours and dropping off every single one of his resumes. That's awesome. That's like, it doesn't get any better than that. Like, the thing is, you got to look at it from their perspective. His resume just showed up, but if they knew that he drove around for 24 hours dropping off his resume, I bet he would have got a lot more callbacks, because people love that type of persistence, right? So it's you got to do that, because then you're just playing a numbers game after a while. Eventually somebody's going to call you back, you're going to get a job. Yeah, so I mean, just kind of keep at it. And I had one more point, but I don't have it right now. I think, yeah, that's probably all I have for now. But yeah, so go, you can pick on somebody else for a second, I guess.
Okay, great, thank you.
I want to tell a quick story related to that. So again, like, this is purely anecdotal, right? And I don't know how well it might scale. But I had a friend here at the U of A, I think during second co-op term, couldn't find a co-op placement. And one day was just down in Calgary. I think his girlfriend was doing something and he drove her down. I was like, I have nothing else to do. So went to the library, printed out his resume, went around, looked on his phone for a few companies that he might be interested in. I came across some random company, don't even remember what it was, but he walked in, handed them his resume and said, hey, can I talk to you about like job opportunities? And the person at the desk said, yeah, okay, just give us a moment, let me call like the VPs. So my friend suddenly landed a half-hour meeting with VPs of this company and some directors. They sat down and they said, so, and he said, well, I know you're a company and you have jobs. So like the most horrible answer, right? He had done no research about the company beforehand, but at least, you know, just being bold in that way, taking advantage of just a day where he had nothing better to do, led to an opportunity. You know, he completely tossed it aside, but you know, it sometimes it does work.
Sorry.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jason's anecdote actually made me remember what I want to say. And these are actually like two tangible pieces of information that, like, if you really want to find a job, you can use. And one that I used in my interview. So this is for if you know exactly where you want to work. Make sure you go online to that company's website. I'm sure it's going to be posted somewhere, and memorize, like, to your heart, the company's mission statement and mandate. Because every company has one, and 99% of the employees at the company don't know what it is. It's, you know, it's just something that the employees don't even know. So if you walk into an interview and you know their mandate and you say, this is how I can help your mission statement and your mandate, your chances of getting that job go way up. Or even if you cold call somebody, you can say, your mission statement and mandate, this is why your company exists, and then this is how I can help that, and this is how I can facilitate that. You can do that. It can help your chances there. Another thing is that if you're trying to get into the engineering sector and you know, you want to maybe it's better for you to start out a small engineering company with just a few employees, not that much staff. If you want to get somebody on the phone, think about who's going to be in the building probably in the very early hours of the morning and the late hours of the night, right? So in the off hours of the office, normally you're going to be talking to a manager or a CEO of the small company because nobody else is there to answer the phones, right? So it's another little thing that you can use. Maybe if like nobody's responding to you, you can try in those off hours, because typically the person that makes most of the decisions or is in charge of stuff is going to still be working in those off hours. So those were two more little things that I want to give just as advice if you're struggling to find a job.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, like, off hours one. That sounds like pretty unique advice. Never even thought of that. Inyani, did you have anything to add to this thread of conversation?
Nothing really. I'm unemployed, so take my advice with a grain of right. But I think if I can emphasize one point, and it's that of hobbies. Right. So I think of the interviews I've had and the opportunities that I've succeeded in procuring, many I don't think I've had a traditional interview in the sense that someone sits me down and or maybe I haven't interviewed enough to know what a traditional interview is. But sits me down and asks me these standard questions. I find that one thing to realize is with an interview, it's as much as for you as to learn about the company as the company or people that you're interviewing to learn about you. And I think that's something that was a piece of advice that was handed down to me quite early on, and I think it really left a large impact and has helped me obtain opportunities and figure out if the places that I'm applying to are actually places that hold shared values, and that's important, right? So you're not just there to be interrogated. You should ask some questions as well, right? So because you are going to be spending time there with the people that are there and working there, so make sure that you ask what you need to ask to make sure that that is an environment conducive to your growth, right? And I say, yeah. So backtracking from that, many of the interviews I've had, it's just been talking about the projects that I've done. So I think I made it a goal just because I was interested in the material that was being taught. Every single core engineering concept in electrical and mechatronics engineering, I try to apply. So whether it's the Fourier series and the Fourier transform, your proportional integral and derivative controllers, even being like solving your differential equations and generating a model, all these things I have projects for, right? So whether it's the robot I showed earlier, or it's the other robot in my room over there, it's a computer vision or imaging project. Like when you start to talk about these things, I've come to realize that people can see that you're actually interested in the things that you've worked on, and that interests them, right? So that's one thing. And two, you can really show what you know, right? And that you've taken the material that you've been taught and you've applied it. And I think for many technical jobs and technical opportunities, that's what they're looking for, right? So someone that actually cares about the material and they weren't just forced to learn all this math and take these derivatives and integrals, but don't care about them at all, right? And can apply that in unique and fun situations. They don't have to be intense projects. They don't have to solve world issues, right? It could be something as simple as, I think the first project I had was my work I worked on that helped me obtain the first research initiative that I got that led to a publication, and then things kind of spiraled from down there, right? Was just I got I'm interested in web development. So I was in electrical engineering, and that's not computer engineering, it's not software engineering, right? But I thought, all right, I think I know enough to be able to do something. So I built this really, really, really a low-level web page with 4 buttons, up, down, left, right. And I Googled, went on all these MOOC courses, Udemy, Coursera, edX, right? Learned about all this, the world of web development, PHP and HTML, like these things that I was not taught in school. And then I was able to bring that in with some things I did know. So microcontrollers. So I bought a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino, I can't recall now, and was able to find a way to make a server on the Raspberry Pi such that when it would broadcast on a site with those 4 buttons, you would click it, and then it would end up sending a command to the Arduino and turn like the wheels of a car. So you kind of had this web page that can control your car, and it was really slow, but it worked, right? And I just recall the interview I had. That's all I talked about, and that's all the person wanted to hear. And after that, I got the position, right? And same thing with my master's. I worked on a small research project with them, but when the time came to actually interview, the same thing happened. I sat down and I talked about now more sophisticated projects, but projects nonetheless, right? So, and at the end of the interview, or during the interview, I was in control. I was talking about things that I did. I was confident to talk about. And the questions that they asked were about things that I knew, right? So it was the dynamics was very different than being asked about things that you don't really or don't have answers to, or don't come off as passionate because, well, you might not be, right? So that's my tidbit from an unemployed student. Work on projects, and if the opportunity presents itself, mention those if they're relevant. And if you're passionate about those things, it will show. And I think that would only strengthen your arguments. And finally, realize that the interview is as much for you as it is for them, right? So you want to learn about them as much as they want to learn about you. And in the end, it's okay to say, you know what, I thought this place was about like this, or had this in the environment and these values, but that's not the case. And I don't know if that's really for me, right? So that's okay too.
Thank you.
I have one more point to there, kind of related to that too. And I know many people see this differently, but if you're reaching out to people through email or through LinkedIn, try to convey some of your enthusiasm through there. Like on LinkedIn, to be honest, if people add me and they don't say why, or like I don't know why they're adding me, I will just ignore it, because like I can't mentally manage, just to have people I don't know in my like professional digital network. I think, it's a very harsh stance, but if somebody messages me and says, "Hi, Jason, like I work in this field and I like thought we might have mutual interest, it'd be good in touch," like that's instantly different level of connection for me than the former, right? So I think it honestly doesn't take a lot of effort either, but just put out there why you're interested, or like why you're reaching out to somebody, what your interests are, even in just like one sentence.
So that makes sense. Thank you. Question that we had in the chat, and this one was directed to both Jason and Tyler, and I think Jason kind of gave his perspective in the chat. So Tyler, I just wanted to get your perspective. The question was, when working in the Netherlands, did you feel like your degree was as recognized as others, such as like other schools that are in Europe that might have more specialized degrees? Did you feel any problems with that, or like what was your experience with that?
No, it was actually, that didn't really exist at all, because the space industry in Europe especially is so multinational that like at the company I was at, more than 50% of the employees were from foreign countries. Like we were in the Netherlands, but there was like 60% non-Dutch people at the company, and they're from all different countries. So somebody would tell me this university they went to in Spain, I never even heard of it before. So I don't know if it's a good school, bad school. And same thing with that. They couldn't even pick out where Alberta was on a map. So they have no idea if I went to a good school, bad school, or anything like that. So it was actually a tremendous advantage, because we all kind of came in on the same playing field. And then you're kind of, the work that you did kind of showed your merit and the education that you got. And you proved it by your actions after a while, but everybody came in on equal footing in the same playing field. And then you just got to be an engineer after that. I think it's far more of a problem in Canada, where everybody knows all the other universities and stuff like that. You're lucky to be at the U of A, which is an especially strong school. So that's a good start. But I think that, and obviously you should never judge people that come from other schools, but I think it would be much more of a problem in Canada than outside of Canada, just because when you're outside of Canada, people don't know about the universities in the country where you come from.
That makes sense. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. I don't know if we had one other question in the chat that was posed by one of the organizers, so I can definitely ask that one. So we'll go with that one. So it's what is a good way to find a mentor, and is it better to have a mentor in the field that you want to be in, I think, like versus the field that you are in? So if any of you have, I'll just open this to anyone who's maybe had an experience with like someone that they would call a mentor, and like how did that kind of go about?
Maybe I can start, and I'll try to be quick. Kirtan, if you want to go.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I think I've been fortunate enough to have mentors in every stage of my education, and sometimes even people that aren't traditional mentors will teach you things, right? And even if it's not what to do. So I think if you keep an eye out, there are many people that are your mentors, and they're not always this like foreign individual. It could be your peers, your classmates. your siblings, your parents, and so on. But if you humble yourself and you're willing to learn, a lot of people are willing to teach and relay what it is that they know to you. So yeah, I think that's my input for that question.
Kirtan.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same thing. You know, you'll kind of find mentors like wherever. I don't know if it's better or worse to have a mentor in that exact field or not. I think it just whatever works for you, and kind of whoever you can kind of uh, whoever you respect and who they know, you're worth their time. So I know for me, being an Alberta sat, and I'm sure Tyler can attest to this, there's lots of mentors in terms of like professors or advisors or whatever. And I can definitely draw from those experiences. But I think, one of the mentors that I've always been leaning on is my old high school swim coach, who I still keep in contact with. And it's just one of those things where, going back to high school, I never thought I'd be asking about space career advice from this guy. But the kind of experiences he has and how we connect and our shared experiences, I guess, kind of have helped. So it's just keeping in contact with good people that you run into in your life. And again, as Inyani mentioned, making sure you show others that you're humble and you're willing to learn. So at MDA, I'm experiencing this where, as a very new hire, at a company where, every month there's somebody reaching their 40-year anniversary at the company, it can be really intimidating. And as long as you're showing that, hey, I know I'm going to make mistakes. Again, as Tyler mentioned, I'm going to try my best. If I make mistakes, that's okay. But I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to know where I can improve. And if people will, especially experienced people, they'll catch on to that, and they'll be like, you know what, this guy is worth my time and effort. And they'll, a couple weeks ago, one of the senior engineers came up, and I just hung out with him for an hour, and he was giving me little tips and tricks. And I never, went out and intentionally asked for that, but you just kind of have to, put yourself out there, allow yourself to be humbled, and invite those kind of good people. And my belief is that if you have that kind of attitude and you put that kind of energy out there, they'll just come. So
Thank you. Jason or Tyler, do you guys have anything you wanted to add to that? Oh, Jason.
Yeah, sorry, Tyler.
Tyler, you have to wait.
I definitely just want to echo what the others said, like wholeheartedly. And I would add, quite often, or every mentor I have had in my life has said the relationship isn't one direction, right? It's not just them imparting wisdom on you. Quite often you're teaching them a lot too, right? One person said, it's even as simple as just a lot of people don't understand how the internet works, or how social media works. And a lot of people our age are more comfortable with that, right? So a lot of them still want to learn that, right? So I think if you come across people who maybe don't have that mindset, maybe they're not going to be a good mentor either, right? But I think the other part is if you picture yourself in the shoe of a mentor, right? If you're later in your career and someone comes to you and shows enthusiasm, shows initiative, I think it's quite intuitive to feel that you do want to support that person because you knew that you were once in the same place, right? So I'd say it's very daunting to reach out for the first time, or even for me, like every time, very daunting to write an email and say, hey, can you give me some advice? Or hey, would you like, or can you be my mentor? It's like asking someone out, right? But in a way, it's quite similar. But what do you have to lose if they say no? Probably nothing. So be bold and just do it. Lost my last point, but I don't think it's that part.
No, that's great. Thank you. And Tyler, either you can answer that, or we have another one in the chat for you. There's a question from a student that's in the software and intelligence systems stream. She's interested in working for the CSA, and just wondering if there's any subjects in her semesters or projects that they could focus on.
Yeah, so definitely for Sunny, it's going to be hard for me to speak to the software streams you should take. That's not particularly my area of expertise, but I'm definitely happy to chat with you and kind of give you any guidance you need. So if I can just I can send my email and we can chat kind of offline afterwards, because we probably won't cover it in 4 minutes or whatever time we have left. We can have another meeting sometime, but I'll drop my email after, but then I'll just answer the question about mentors. I think that, yeah, if you're looking for a mentor, it's actually a lot easier to get one than people think. I think people don't realize, I think a lot of people out there are just they're dying for somebody to ask them to be a mentor. They want somebody to ask them, to give them their advice. Think of why are there 30 alumni at this event tonight giving advice to everybody? We all want to just tell you exactly what worked for us, what didn't, and we want to see you do a better version of it and stuff like that. We have all this, I feel like it would go to waste, all that knowledge I built up over the course of university and how to take classes and the approach I should take, if I didn't get to share with anybody. What I'm getting a job out of university, what am I ever going to do with that knowledge? Again, I can't use it for myself. I already have my job. I'd rather use it to kind of make your guys' life easier. So, I mean, mentors are easy to find. People want to share information. And so you shouldn't think that you're annoying somebody by doing it, because it's not a one-way communication. It's not a one-way relationship. It's definitely very symbiotic between the two people. So, and then, yeah, I think I really like the point from Inyani that, yeah, you can learn something from everybody. So even if you don't have a mentor, you should pay attention to every single person, know that they've had a completely different life experience. They've taken a completely different path than you, and they've learned lessons that you've never even been exposed to that experience. So they have some value in there that you can learn about and extract. So, and that's where I think there's that with people, when they're having conversations these days, I feel like a lot of times you listen to conversations and people are just kind of waiting for their turn to speak and not really listening to what other people are saying. When you're talking to somebody and stuff like that, and if you do this, you'll really never need a mentor. I don't feel like you should really be deeply thinking about the other person's experience and try to ask a question that pertains to them. And then you can extract a lot of information about it in every encounter in your everyday life. So, I mean, that's a really good approach to take. And then the whole world is your mentor, right? So, but then if you want career advice, pick somebody that has the career that you would like and try to, you can establish that relationship, and then they can give you really tangible, solid career choices and stuff like that. And I think just ask. Like Jason says, it's like dating, where if they say no, whatever, who cares? So just ask. You got to take that risk. So that's my opinion on that.
I love how we went. Go ahead.
Throw one more point in.
Yeah,
I'm always this guy, right? Sorry, I have one more point.
No.
The point I forgot earlier was one of my mentors completely changed how I thought about relationships with other entities, but also even personal relationships. I had this mindset that to be in touch with people, you have to constantly talk to them, every few weeks, months, whatever, check in. But this person who's an executive in government said to me, the mark of a strong relationship, in your network or elsewhere, is that if you haven't talked for a while, you can just get back to chatting and what's the expression? But you don't need to constantly be talking to somebody. It's more just that you can pick it back up again. So even if you talked to somebody a few years ago and haven't talked to them since, professionally, feel free to reach out to them again, right? A lot of people will remember you even if you don't think they did. I think, I don't want to speak for the others, but I think a key message we probably all have is it's a lot easier to do than you think. There's statistics about how people applying for jobs, if you're female or a person of color, a visible minority, you're less likely to apply for jobs if you're not qualified for, right? But then, the traditional straight white male will apply for jobs that they're 4 years underqualified for, right? like whatever statistics there are other reasons for it, but just embrace that confidence. All right, just go for it.
Can I put in a plug for mental health just really quickly? So
Go ahead. We've gone
yeah.
everywhere today.
Engineering is really hard work, and it's a lot of stress. And we talk about it in hindsight now. So hindsight is 2020. Things were always happy, right? But that's not always the case. And I think at some point we were all stressed. And I can tell you personally, in my third year, we had one of our classmates end his life, and I was very tragic. So what I want to say is, no midterm or final is worth your life, right? And although you might feel very stressed, and you might think that things aren't going your way, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And for those that are around you, right? You, your friends, peers, and so on, look around, pause, say hi to someone in your class that you've never said hi to before. And I think, especially now during this pandemic, it's more important than ever. So like, we are responsible for looking out for each other. So let's make sure that we do that. And I can tell you personally, on camera, right? I've done pretty bad in some courses. I failed some midterms, right? But yet I still made it to get my master's. I still made it to med school, right? So it's not the end of the world. And just make sure that you're looking out and taking care of all those that you can. And sometimes it's just as simple as saying, hey, hi, I haven't talked to you before. How are you doing? How are you enjoying this class? And so on. So.
No, that's great. Thank you, Inyani. Tyler, did you want
I just want to, I got to add just a little bit. It's
go
just,
on.
I love this too, because like again, Jason talked about the bias of success earlier, and I just like want to, because I know a lot of people like struggle academically and stuff like that. I just want to say that, yeah, like I had like brutal semesters too, where I floated a low 2.0, thought I was going on academic probation. I failed multiple classes. There were so many days I didn't know if I was even going to get my engineering degree. It's difficult for everybody, and it's never smooth sailing. So I had to, struggle a lot with that as well, just getting grades to get by. So if anybody ever struggles with that, that was like the biggest thing for me during university. That was the biggest struggle. You can reach out to me. Incredibly important, and far too many people kind of go through that stress without realizing that tons of other people do as well. Same
train. Yeah, I mean, I've had years where it's like, C's get degrees. Okay, sure, whatever. And you're just kind of down in the dumps. But yeah, no, I can totally relate to that whole sentiment.
I'm just looking at the chat. Some people are saying thank you. Yeah, that's really awesome. Thanks, guys. I really like how our conversation progressed. It is 7 now, so I think that the networking space is still open. And there's also, for the participants, there's like an expo space. So I believe you can go in there and look at like different student groups and stuff like that, get familiar with some of the stuff on campus. And Tyler, there was another message for you regarding the CSA stuff. So I think if the participant just wants to email you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Eric, you can just, my email's in the chat there, and you can just send me an email about it for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming out and chatting with us. It was really awesome to learn from you guys today. I think everyone can say that. We had a lot of people in our room for a lot of the time, so I think that's cool.